Ancient Egypt's relationship with shapeshifters and transformation myths differs significantly from the werewolf legends that later emerged in European folklore. While the civilization held wolves in high regard and featured prominent wolf-headed deities in their pantheon, the concept of humans transforming into wolves or other animals took on a uniquely Egyptian character. The distinction between divine transformation and curse-based lycanthropy proves crucial for understanding how ancient Egyptians viewed the relationship between humans, animals, and their gods. The Egyptian understanding of transformation centered primarily on the divine realm rather than mortal curses or afflictions. Their religious texts, particularly the Book of the Dead, describe gods assuming various animal forms as manifestations of their power rather than as punishment or curse. This fundamental difference from later European werewolf myths reflects a worldview where the boundary between human and animal was seen as naturally permeable for divine beings, but not necessarily for mortals. The city of Lycopolis exemplifies the Egyptian reverence for wolves and wolf-headed deities. During the pre-dynastic period around 3100 BC, this significant religious center housed temples dedicated to wolf gods and contained ceremonially mummified wolves. Archaeological evidence suggests these wolves were considered sacred animals, representatives of the divine rather than fearsome monsters or cursed beings. The Egyptian pantheon featured several prominent wolf-headed deities who embodied positive attributes and protective functions. These gods were associated with guidance, protection, and the maintenance of cosmic order, contrasting sharply with later Western depictions of wolves as symbols of evil or chaos. The gods' ability to manifest in different forms was seen as a sign of their power and wisdom rather than a tragic transformation. Intriguingly, some researchers have drawn parallels between ancient Egyptian wolf-headed deities and modern accounts of Dogmen, humanoid canine creatures reported in various parts of the world. While there's no direct historical evidence linking these phenomena, some theorists suggest that ancient encounters with unknown canine entities might have influenced Egyptian religious iconography. However, mainstream scholars generally reject such connections, viewing them as retrospective attempts to find historical precedent for contemporary cryptozoological claims. The distinction between divine wolf-headed beings and reported Dogmen encounters lies primarily in their nature and function. Egyptian deities were viewed as transcendent beings with cosmic roles, while modern Dogmen reports typically describe mysterious physical creatures. Some paranormal researchers have attempted to bridge this gap by suggesting that ancient Egyptians might have encountered similar entities, but interpreted them through a religious rather than cryptozoological lens. Contemporary cryptozoological literature sometimes points to Egyptian wolf-headed deity imagery as potential evidence for a long history of Dogmen encounters. These theories often cite the detailed anatomical accuracy of some Egyptian depictions of wolf-headed beings, suggesting they might have been based on actual observations. However, Egyptologists attribute this accuracy to the culture's careful study of actual wolves and their religious significance. In ancient Egyptian religion, wolf-headed deities held positions of immense importance, with each serving distinct yet sometimes overlapping functions in the cosmic order. Understanding these gods reveals much about Egyptian religious thought and their positive association with wolves, contrasting sharply with later cultural attitudes toward these animals. Anubis, perhaps the most recognized wolf-headed deity, served as the primary god of death, mummification, and the afterlife. His black-headed wolf form symbolized not death itself, but rather regeneration and the fertile soil of the Nile. As the guardian of the dead, he performed crucial roles in the afterlife journey, including the weighing of the heart ceremony that determined a soul's fate. Anubis's protective, rather than predatory nature demonstrates how Egyptians viewed wolves as guardians rather than threats. Wepwawet, whose name translates to opener of the ways, served as both a war deity and royal protector. His association with the pharaohs and military campaigns shows how Egyptians connected wolf attributes to leadership and strategic thinking. As one of Egypt's oldest deities, his grey or white wolf head distinguished him from Anubis, though both gods sometimes shared overlapping roles in funerary contexts. Debunking, one of the four sons of Horus, represented a more specialized protective function. As guardian of the stomach in mummification rituals and protector of the eastern direction, his wolf-headed form appeared on canopic jars and funeral implements. His role demonstrates how wolf imagery extended beyond major deities into practical funerary practices. The interconnected relationships between these wolf-headed gods reflected Egyptian beliefs about cosmic harmony. They worked together rather than competing, with Anubis and Wepwawet sometimes described as brothers, while Debunking operated within the framework of the four sons of Horus. This cooperation among wolf deities further emphasizes their positive religious associations. Archaeological evidence from Lycopolis, modern Asyut, provides physical proof of wolf veneration, with mummified wolves indicating their sacred status. The city's dedication to wolf gods and the preservation of actual wolves demonstrates how religious beliefs translated into practical worship and ritual practices, bridging the gap between symbolic and literal wolf reverence. These deities' enduring importance is evidenced by their representation in Egyptian art and architecture across multiple dynasties. Their imagery appears in royal tombs, temples, and religious texts, showing how central they were to both state religion and popular worship. The consistency of their depiction over thousands of years suggests their roles remained relatively stable, despite other religious changes. Later cultural interactions, particularly with Greeks and Romans, sometimes led to syncretic combinations or reinterpretations of these wolf deities. However, their essential protective and guidance roles remained largely intact, even as other aspects of Egyptian religion evolved. This persistence speaks to the fundamental importance of wolf symbolism in Egyptian religious thought. Modern research has enhanced our understanding of these deities by confirming that their animal aspects were indeed based on wolves rather than jackals, as previously believed. This revelation aligns with ancient Egyptian and Greek sources that consistently described them as wolf gods, validating historical accounts and religious texts. The relationship between ancient Egyptian wolf deities and modern Dogmen accounts raises interesting questions about how different cultures interpret and categorize unexplained phenomena. While ancient Egyptians clearly placed their wolf-headed beings within a religious framework, contemporary accounts tend toward cryptozoological or paranormal explanations. This contrast highlights how cultural context shapes the interpretation of unusual or mysterious experiences. The wolf-headed gods of Egypt represent a sophisticated religious system where animal attributes were seen as divine strengths rather than primitive or fearsome qualities. Their roles in protection, guidance, and maintaining cosmic order demonstrate how Egyptian culture viewed wolves as noble, intelligent creatures worthy of divine association. This positive religious symbolism stands in marked contrast to later Western traditions that often demonized wolves and their imagery. These deities' complex functions and interrelationships reflect the sophistication of Egyptian religious thought, where animal aspects represented divine attributes rather than limitations. Through their wolf-headed gods, ancient Egyptians expressed ideas about death, kingship, protection, and cosmic order that remained influential throughout their civilization's long history and continue to fascinate scholars and enthusiasts today. While modern paranormal researchers have attempted to retroactively identify werewolf-like creatures in ancient Egyptian culture, most scholars argue that such interpretations reflect contemporary biases rather than historical reality. Some theorists point to hieroglyphic depictions of human-animal hybrid beings as evidence of shapeshifter beliefs, but Egyptologists generally interpret these as symbolic representations of divine attributes rather than literal transformation accounts. Egyptian magical texts and spells occasionally reference human-animal transformation, but these typically describe temporary ritual identification with animal spirits rather than physical metamorphosis. Priests would don animal masks and skins during certain ceremonies, creating a spiritual connection with divine forces without implying actual shape-shifting. This practice may have contributed to later Greek and Roman misinterpretations of Egyptian religious customs. Popular culture has frequently misappropriated and reimagined Egyptian mythology to include werewolf elements that didn't exist in the original sources. Movies, books, and games often depict Egyptian mummies or priests transforming into wolves, mixing Western werewolf tropes with Egyptian aesthetic elements. This cultural fusion, while creative, has little historical basis in ancient Egyptian beliefs. The lack of traditional werewolf legends in ancient Egypt hasn't prevented modern storytellers from incorporating Egyptian themes into contemporary lycanthropy narratives. Some authors and filmmakers have created stories linking werewolf curses to ancient Egyptian magic, or suggesting that wolf-headed gods were actually prehistoric werewolves. These creative interpretations reflect modern storytelling preferences more than historical accuracy. Recent archaeological and zoological findings have helped clarify the relationship between ancient Egyptians and wolves. The discovery that the Egyptian jackal is actually a species of grey wolf has led to reinterpretation of various cultural artifacts and religious symbols. This scientific insight helps explain the prominence of wolf imagery in Egyptian art and religion, while underscoring the absence of werewolf-like transformation myths. While ancient Egypt had a rich mythology involving wolf-headed gods and animal symbolism, it lacked the traditional werewolf PR Dogmen legends familiar to modern audiences. Their religious and cultural worldview embraced human-animal hybrid deities and divine transformation without developing the curse-based lycanthropy concepts that emerged in other cultures. Understanding this distinction helps us appreciate the unique character of Egyptian mythology, while recognizing how modern interpretations have often projected later werewolf traditions onto ancient Egyptian beliefs.